Good for you. You're tuning in for the optional lesson on webinars. In this lesson, I'm going to walk you through the structure of how we set up our webinars. Because remember, I said you don't just want to walk up on stage and just start talking, which is what most webinar presenters do. What we're going to do is we're going to help establish your credibility and authority by having a host, and they're going to say and do some very specific things, which is what I'm going to tell you and walk you through here in this particular lesson. The other thing that I would say is that we're going to pretend that this is for an 8 p.m. webinar. So one of the things that you'll hear me talk about are the timings of webinars. Typically we would do one at 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and 8 p.m. And what I want you to do is I want you to just back out the timing of this for whatever time that you do your webinars. Make sense? So for this example, we're going to do and pretend that we're using an 8 p.m. webinar. So let's go to the board and I'm going to walk you through a bunch of things. So if you are starting the webinar at 8 p.m., you want to have your team ready at 7:40. Now at 7:40 is when your team is going to send out a last-minute reminder to everybody who's on the webinar. Now we would typically use GoToWebinar, so we would go into GoToWebinar and we would change the title of the webinar. We would just put ** starting now, and then it asks us if we want to send that to everybody, and we would say yes, boom, and it would send it out to everybody. So that last-minute reminder goes out at 7:40. So last-minute reminder, okay? Next, we would then start the webinar at 7:45. This is where your host comes on and welcomes everybody. And there are a few things that the host is going to do. So the host welcomes, and there are a few things that the host is going to do. Now, I want you to make a list of these. And in fact, I want you to download the worksheet that accompanies this particular lesson so that you've got this. But I'll tell you them now. The host is going to welcome everybody. That's the number one thing. So they're going to encourage people to share their name and city where they are listening from. And you want to encourage people to enter that into the chat box or the question box of your webinar control panel. That gets people engaged early. So the host is going to welcome people and they're going to give people a shout out. They're going to say, hey, Sally from Nebraska. Hey, Susie from Arkansas. Hey, Will from, Luxembourg. Wherever people are listening from. They're going to acknowledge people, as many as they can, by name and the city. Now, as you get a lot of people coming on, you're not going to be able to mention everybody, but the more people you can mention, the better. So the first thing they do is they welcome people. Second thing they do is that they reiterate the title and the transformation or the benefit of that particular webinar. So they would say, welcome everybody. Today you're here for the presentation called blah, 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 and here's what you can expect. Benefit transformation. So you want to make sure that the host is very clear on not only the title, which they should show, because you should have a title slide that'll appear, and I'm going to go through that in a minute here as well. But they'll have the title slide and they're going to say the title and the benefit that everybody's going to experience. So number one, welcome. Number two, title and benefit. Number three, you want to encourage everybody to download the workbook for this particular webinar. So with every webinar that we would create a fill-in-the-blank workbook. It's really important because then people can follow along and fill in the blanks, and it keeps them engaged into what you're saying and what you're teaching. If you don't have that, they'll drift and they won't pay attention and yada, yada, yada. So create a workbook, and all it is basically following through your slides with fill in the blanks. And the way that the host positions this is the host would say something like, you're going to go and want to download the workbook for today's presentation. You can do that at url.com/workbook. Because you and I both know that by the time this webinar is finished, you'll have forgotten half of what was shared. So to prevent that from happening, because we want you to get value, go and download the workbook now and fill in the blanks and follow along. That way you'll have this material for as long as you need it, and you'll be able to reference it again and again and again. So that's how we would explain the workbook. That's component number 3. Component number 4 is that we would encourage people to participate in a contest. And so we would say, today, not only are you going to get an incredible presentation, but we've also got a great contest. And you can participate by going to facebook.com/your name. So in our case, we would do facebook.com/Michael Hyatt. And we would say, when you land on that page, you're going to see a post about this webinar that you're on right now. And in there is a question, and you would read that question out loud. Then you would say, and if you would like a chance to win whatever product you're selling, so we would actually give away the product we're selling, and this is a great opportunity for the host to first mention the product that we're going to be selling later on the webinar. So it's a chance for the host to plant the seed of the great thing that's about to come. So the host can almost set up the sale of the product that you're selling by saying, if you would like a chance to win, Michael Hyatt's brand new course called blah, 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 or if you would like the chance to win your brand new course called blah, 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 or if you would like the chance to win a subscription to your membership, then you mention that. So it's a chance for the host to first mention whatever is going to be sold on the webinar. Now the contest is that if you would like the chance, there are 2 ways to enter. Number 1 is just to share that Facebook post. So that's the post that has all the details of the webinar. So now people are sharing that post with their followings. And so you encourage them, everybody who shares automatically gets entered into the contest because you can see all the people that share. We'll talk about how to pick a winner in a minute. The second way to enter the contest is just to enter a comment of what your big takeaway is from today's presentation. So during the presentation, as you have takeaways, make sure you enter them. The more you enter, the more chance you have to win. So there are multiple ways to win. Either enter your comment or share the post. People love it. And then it also gets a lot of your marketing messages out there about the webinar because people are sharing it, they're commenting, and they're highly engaged. Make sense? Okay, so that is component number 4, which is the Facebook contest. Component number 5 is that you want to mention the fact that you also have bonuses that will be given away in the first 10 minutes. So the host, again, plays an important role because the host is setting things up in the future. So the host would say something like, and if it doesn't get any better than the great content you're about to experience, the contest, Michael or you also have a great bonus that is going to be given to you just for showing up here today. You'll be going to get that in the first 10 minutes of today's presentation. So the bare minimum, make sure you hang around to the 10-minute mark when the host when the presenter gives you that bonus. So we would always have what we called a show up bonus. And it was some incentive for people to actually just show up to the webinar. And we would talk about that and promote that in the build up to the webinar and in the emails that go out slightly before the webinar, just to, again, incentivize people to show up to the live webinar. So at 7:45, the host is cycling through those 5 things. Let me repeat them. Number 1, welcoming people, name and city. Number 2 is the title and the transformation or the benefit of the presentation. Number 3 is the workbook. Number 4 is the Facebook contest. And number 5 is the show up bonus. So the host is talking about those 5 things again and again and again, and they're cycling through that for the first 15 minutes. Then they get to the top of the hour at 8 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, then you go into a formal presentation of the presenter. So host, formal intro. So the host does a formal intro of the presenter. And in a minute, I'm going to walk you through when we have webcams on and when we have them off, because we actually have them on and off for different reasons. And I'll explain that in a minute. So the host does a formal intro. This is important because this is the chance for the host to establish the credibility and authority of the presenter without the presenter coming off looking like an egotistical jerk trying to mention all the things that they've done. The host can do that, and it looks absolutely natural. It's just like, again, a host bringing somebody up on stage and introducing them in a live event. It's the same thing. So the host can say and all these great things about you. The host can brag about you, and you look like a star or look like the expert that you are. Okay, so the host does the formal intro. This will take about, usually a couple minutes, so we'll say 8:03. Then there is the host and presenter, and they do an informal intro. So the host and the presenter come on together, and they do a small little chit chat. This is like where the host says to the presenter, well, I'm really excited about today's presentation. Can you share with everybody what they can expect to get from today's presentation? So this is a chance for the presenter in an informal way just to be able to say, yes, this is what they can expect. Benefit, benefit, benefit. So you get to reiterate the benefit in that informal intro. That makes sense? Okay. Then at that point, the host officially hands it over. So this is usually at like the 8:05 mark. This is where now the presenter takes over. So the presenter presents. So pretty straightforward. They go right into their presentation. So this is where you, if you're the expert and you're the presenter, you go right into your presentation. So the presenter presents and they go right into it, and at the 8:10 mark is when they're going to give that show up bonus. Okay. Okay, so it gives the show up bonus. Now I'm going to walk you through what happens at the end of the presentation in just a minute. But what I want to do is I want to identify something here that's really important. And that is when to put webcams on and when to put webcams off. So when you officially start, the host welcomes. And at this point, the host has webcam on. Now the reason the webcam should be on is because it makes the host human. It makes this whole experience feel natural. It's not orchestrated. So the host has the webcam on, and the host is welcoming people, and they're friendly, and they're engaged, and they're excited, etc., etc. And they go through those 5 things that we talked about. Then when the host delivers the formal intro, the host has the webcam off. So webcam off. The reason they put the webcam off is because the intro is going to be formal, and it's going to have slides, and it's going to have a specific script that the host is going to read. So you don't want them having to pay attention to the webcam and to the actual script. So you shut the webcam off, and that also focuses your audience on what is being said and what is being shared, which you want during this formal intro time. Does that make sense? Okay. Then both the host and the presenter turn their webcams on during the informal intro. So host plus presenter webcams on. Hopefully you can read my chicken scratch writing here, okay? But this, you put the webcams on, and because it disarms any feeling like this is, again, an orchestrated sales presentation or anything of that nature. It creates a more natural, engaged setting. It makes you human, which is what you want. You want people to feel like you're human, because you are. And so during the informal intro, you turn the webcams on. Then, once the presenter gets into the actual presentation, the host would say something like this. They would say, okay, presenter name, I'm going to hand it officially off to you, so I'm going to shut the webcams off and let you run with this. So then, during this, nobody has any webcams off. So all webcams off. Okay, is it making sense so far? Good. Okay, so that's the structure for essentially starting the webinar. Okay, so 7:40, you want a last minute reminder to go out. 7:45, the host jumps on, starts the webinar and starts to welcome people. They go through those 5 things that we talked about. Do you remember what they are? They are welcoming people, name and city. They have the title and benefit of the presentation. It's the workbook. It's the contest on Facebook. And it's the show up bonus. Okay, those are the 5 things that the host is cycling through during this period. 8 o'clock, the host does a formal intro of the presenter. They shut the webcams off, and they're basically reading a script that is scripted out that establishes the authority and credibility of the host. 8:03, roughly, 8:03, 8:04, depending on the length of the intro, both the host and the presenter come back on the webcam, and again, they do an informal intro. Then at 8:05, the host hands it off to the presenter, shuts all the webcams off, and the presenter starts presenting and delivering the presentation. At 8:10, they do the show up bonus. Okay, so now let's fast forward all the content. And let's talk about what happens at the end of the webinar. Typically, the content period is going to last roughly around 45 minutes. So you can see here, 8:05 is when we start. So 45 minutes later, that would take them to 8:50, okay? So 8:50 to probably, I would say 9:05 is typically the length of the pitch, depending on. So let's just say 8:50. This is where the presenter delivers pitch. Okay, then once the presenter is finished delivering the pitch, the host comes back on, and this is usually at about 9:05. And the host comes back on. Host plus presenter. And this is when they answer questions. So Q&A. And during this time, when you are answering questions, there's a couple key things. You want to have some set questions that are established up front. These are common objections that you're going to answer. So the first 3 or 4 questions should be common objections that you're going to answer. And I want you to listen to the way that I phrase this. When the host says, okay, thank you, presenter, this was such great information. There's a lot of excitement coming in from the comments, from the contest, and from questions that people are asking. So I want to get to some live questions here in just a second. But a common question that has come up before is, and then boom, you go right into the objections that most people have. So your top 3 objections. But did you notice how I phrased that? I didn't say a live question that we've had come in today from Sally, because if it's not true, then don't say that. But what I said was a common question that has come up before is, and then you would ask the common objection question. That makes sense? So your first 3 questions that your host is going to ask all address common objections. Then you get into live Q&A. And again, the host wants to encourage people to send in questions. And in fact, during the welcome period, if they do, that could be another thing that you could add to that cycle of 5 things. You could add, encourage people to ask questions throughout the webinar. But you want to make sure that the live questions coming in, you have people behind the scenes who are spoon feeding the host questions that people are asking, so the host isn't having to sift and sort through all the questions coming through the webinar control panel. So the host is asking the presenter questions, as well as the host. One of the things that you want them to do is you want them to almost give like a virtual high five to people who have already signed up for the membership. So in our case, one of the things that we would do is we would acknowledge people who signed up during the call or during the webinar, and we would give them a shout out. So we would say, the host would say, all right, Michael, before we get to the next question, I just want to give a shout out to, and then boom, I would typically read 10, 15, 20, 25 names real quickly of people who have just signed up for the membership. It's really powerful because it just provides a ton of social proof. In addition to that, the host would also say something like, and if you just signed up for Platform University, or if you just signed up for your membership, let me know in the Q&A box and tell me why you decided to join us today. And so now you got all these other people who are signing up and they're sharing with you why they decided to sign up. It's just tons of social proof, and it creates a ton of excitement. So people, they want to share why they joined and why they're excited about it. And it's a great way for you to give them a virtual high five and a shout out and so forth. So the host has got to have a lot of energy, and the host plays an important role in the Q&A period, both for helping the presenter answer common objections and for creating excitement and social proof of all the people signing up. So the one thing that I'll add here so you've got it is social proof of sales and encourage excitement. Hopefully you can read my chicken scratch, but that's the role of the host. So you can see this is the before the presentation, this is after the presentation. They both play a vital role by having a host as part of that mix. So that's our webinar structure. Hopefully it provides you some clarity as to, number one, the importance of having a host, and number two, the role the host should play during that webinar. If you follow this, I guarantee you, you will have a much higher conversion rate as it relates to your overall sales. All right, so there you go for the optional lesson. Thanks for joining me. We'll talk to you soon.